When everything was falling apart for the Parkers, a desperate German shepherd appeared in a thunderstorm, changing their lives forever. Watch how one extraordinary connection between a grieving girl and a remarkable dog transforms a failing farm into something miraculous. Where are you watching from? Comment below and subscribe. The sky above Miller's Creek, Iowa, darkened ominously as 8-year-old Emma Parker trudged home from the school bus stop. Her small shoulders hunched beneath her too-big denim jacket, a hand-me-down from her mother, Sarah, who had left 6 months ago without so much as a goodbye note. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Emma quickened her pace along the gravel road leading to their struggling family farm. Emma was small for her age, with freckles scattered across her nose and unruly auburn hair that refused to stay in the neat braids she attempted each morning. But what she lacked in size, she made up for in determination. Her emerald green eyes, so like her absent mother's, held a wisdom beyond her years, a result of growing up faster than any child should have to. "Looks like we're in for another gully washer," Mrs. Wilson had warned when dropping Emma at her stop. The elderly bus driver's weather predictions were rarely wrong. She could feel storms in her arthritic knees long before the meteorologists announced them. The first fat raindrops began to fall as Emma reached the rusty mailbox marking the entrance to Parker Family Farms, a grandiose name for what had become, since her mother's departure, 50 acres of struggling corn, a small herd of dairy cows, and mounting debt. "Dad," Emma called, pushing open the screen door to their weathered farmhouse. The familiar sense of coffee and grease greeted her, but no response came. Through the kitchen window, she spotted her father's tall figure in the distance, frantically securing equipment before the storm hit. John Parker had once been considered handsome throughout Harper County, with his square jaw and dependable nature. Now at 41, his face was etched with worry lines, his broad shoulders perpetually stooped with the weight of running the farm alone. The only time he truly smiled anymore was when Emma brought home straight A's from Miller's Creek Elementary. As the storm intensified, Emma completed her after-school routine, hanging her backpack on its designated hook, washing her hands, and pouring herself a glass of milk. That's when she heard it, a faint whimpering carried on the wind, barely audible above the strengthening downpour. Emma pressed her face against the window, squinting through the sheets of rain. There, by the abandoned barn her grandfather had built decades ago, a dark shape moved painfully slowly. Without hesitation, Emma grabbed her yellow raincoat and ran outside. "Hello," she called, rain immediately soaking through her jeans as she approached the dilapidated structure. Lightning illuminated the scene, revealing a mud-covered German shepherd collapsed by the barn door. The dog's amber eyes, filled with both fear and exhaustion, met Emma's. Behind her, nestled against her emaciated body, 2 tiny puppies whimpered. "Oh my goodness," Emma whispered, kneeling in the mud. "You're hurt, aren't you? And you've got babies." The dog growled weakly, protective despite her obvious distress. "It's okay," Emma soothed, using the gentle voice she'd learned from Mr. Jenkins, the retired K-9 officer who sometimes visited their school. "I won't hurt you. I promise." As if understanding, the shepherd's tense muscles relaxed slightly. "Emma." Her father's angry voice cut through the storm. John Parker appeared through the rain, his expression thunderous. "Get back to the house right now. That animal could be dangerous." "She's hurt, Dad," Emma pleaded, not moving from the dog's side. "And she has puppies. They'll die out here." "That's not our problem," John said firmly, though his voice wavered slightly at the sight of his daughter's tear-filled eyes. "We can call animal control tomorrow. By tomorrow they could be dead," Emma argued, her small chin jutting out stubbornly, a gesture so reminiscent of her mother that John almost took a step back. "Please, Dad, just until the storm passes." Lightning cracked across the sky as John stared at his daughter, rain plastering his thinning brown hair to his forehead. Something in Emma's determined expression, that stubborn Parker chin, made his anger falter. Behind her, the German shepherd's eyes watched him warily, her body curved protectively around her whimpering puppies. 3 days, John finally said, his voice gruff with reluctance. "They can stay in the old barn for 3 days while we figure out who they belong to. Not a day longer, understand? And they're your responsibility." Emma's face lit up with a smile that had been all too rare since Sarah left. "Thank you, Daddy. I promise I'll take care of everything." Together, They created a makeshift shelter in the abandoned barn. John brought over some old blankets while Emma carefully coaxed the reluctant mother and her pups inside, out of the raging storm. "She needs a name," Emma said, watching as the exhausted dog finally settled onto the nest of blankets. John sighed. Knowing his daughter was already forming an attachment he'd have to break later. "Emma, remember, just for now," she insisted. "We can't just call her Dog." After studying the animal's dignified profile despite her condition, Emma declared, "Stella. Her name is Stella." In the farmhouse kitchen, John watched as his daughter meticulously mixed warm milk and softened dog food for Stella, her small hands working with surprising competence. "Where'd you learn to do that?" he asked, folding his arms across his chest. "Mr. Jenkins showed us when he brought his police dogs to school," Emma replied without looking up. "He said puppies need special food when they're tiny." John frowned. "Emma, these dogs probably belong to someone. They might have microchips. Then why was Stella hurt and starving?" Emma challenged, her green eyes flashing. Nobody who loved her would let her get like this. Later that night, as rain pounded against the roof, John sat at the kitchen table reviewing bills by lamplight. The bank's final notice glared up at him, threatening foreclosure if he missed another payment. 6 months of farming alone, with nobody to share the burden since Sarah decided small-town Iowa couldn't contain her dreams anymore. "Dad," John looked up to find Emma in her faded flannel pajamas, hair damp from her shower. "Shouldn't you be in bed, kiddo? It's a school night." "I checked on Stella first," she said, climbing onto the chair opposite him. "She ate all the food, and the puppies are nursing." "That's good, right?" Despite himself, John smiled. "That's good." Emma fidgeted with the frayed edge of the tablecloth. "Dad, why do you think Mom left?" The question hit John like a physical blow. 6 months, and Emma had barely mentioned Sarah. Now, suddenly, with 3 strays in their barn, she wanted answers he didn't have. "Your mom." John struggled for words. "She wanted different things. Things we couldn't give her here. But she wanted me, right?" Emma's voice was small, vulnerable in a way that broke John's heart. "Of course she did, sweetheart," he said automatically, though Sarah's hasty departure during Emma's school day told a different story. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt the people they love. It doesn't mean they don't love them. Emma nodded, though her eyes revealed her doubt. "I think Stella was abandoned too," she whispered. "But I won't abandon her. I promise." As John tucked Emma into bed minutes later, he found himself promising to check on the dogs before turning in, a concession he hadn't planned to make. He'd call the county shelter tomorrow, he told himself as he kissed Emma's forehead. 3 days, then back to reality. But when he visited the barn, flashlight in hand, he found Stella alert despite her exhaustion, amber eyes watching him with intelligent wariness. Unlike the fear-aggression he'd expected, she displayed a quiet dignity that gave him pause. "Don't get too comfortable," he told the dog gruffly. "This isn't permanent." Stella blinked slowly in response, as if to say, "We'll see about that." The following morning dawned clear and crisp, the storm having washed away both clouds and dust, leaving behind puddles that reflected the rising sun. Emma was up before her alarm, eager to check on her newfound charges. John found her empty bed and knew exactly where she'd gone. When he entered the old barn, the sight that greeted him wasn't what he expected. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, notebook open on her lap, while Stella sat attentively before her, ears perked forward despite her obvious weakness. "Sit," Emma commanded gently, her hand moving in a precise gesture. To John's astonishment, the dog immediately complied, then looked expectantly at Emma. "Good girl," Emma praised, offering a small piece of breakfast sausage she'd clearly smuggled from the kitchen. The puppies, eyes still closed, slept peacefully in their makeshift bed. "What are you doing?" John asked, leaning against the doorframe. Emma jumped slightly, caught in the act. "Just seeing what she knows," she explained. "I think she was trained, Dad. She knows commands." John frowned, crossing his arms. "That means she definitely belongs to someone." "But look at her," Emma protested, gesturing toward Stella's protruding ribs and the healing cuts along her flank. "If she has an owner, they don't deserve her." Before John could respond, his phone rang. It was Bill Anderson from the neighboring farm, needing help with a broken tractor part. As he turned to leave, John pointed a warning finger at Emma. "School bus in 40 minutes. Don't make me come looking for you." "I won't," Emma promised, already turning back to Stella. Throughout the school day, Emma could barely focus on her lessons. Her mind constantly drifted to the barn, to Stella and the puppies waiting for her. During lunch, she sat alone as usual, sketching training exercises in her notebook instead of socializing with classmates who had long ago labeled her the weird farm girl. "Watch a drawing, Parker?" Lily Thompson asked, peering over Emma's shoulder. As the daughter of Harper County's wealthiest family, Lily took pleasure in highlighting others' shortcomings. "Nothing," Emma replied, shielding her notebook. "Are those dogs?" Lily persisted, her perfect ponytail swinging as she tilted her head. "I thought your dad was too poor to afford pets." Emma's cheeks burned. "My dad isn't poor. We just have a farm to run." "A failing farm," Lily corrected with cruel precision. "My dad says the bank's going to take it any day now." Before Emma could respond, Mrs. Winters, their science teacher, approached. "Everything all right, girls?" "Yes, Mrs. Winters," they chorused, Lily immediately adopting her perfect student smile. When Emma finally arrived home that afternoon, she raced to the barn, her heart pounding with worry. To her relief, Stella was there, the puppies still nursing contentedly. But something was different. Beside the blankets sat a fresh bowl of water and an old plastic container filled with kibble. "Dad," Emma called, confused. "In the house," came the reply. John was at the kitchen table, laptop open to a veterinary website. "Called Doc Wilson," he explained gruffly when Emma entered. "Said the puppies need to be checked for parasites. He's coming by tomorrow." Emma's face lit up. "You called the vet?" John sighed heavily. "Just to make sure they're healthy before we find them homes." "Don't get attached, Emma. 3 days, remember?" "She's special, Dad," Emma insisted, sliding into the chair beside him. "Watch what she can do." John followed Emma back to the barn, where she demonstrated Stella's remarkable response to commands. "Sit, stay, come," all executed with precision despite the dog's weakened state. "Mr. Jenkins said dogs like this are 1 in a million," Emma explained, her voice filled with pride. "He said they have something called intuitive intelligence. They understand things other dogs don't." As if to prove Emma's point, Stella suddenly stood alert, ears forward, then trotted purposefully toward the pasture fence. She barked once, twice, her stance rigid with purpose. "What's she doing?" John asked, squinting in the direction Stella was focused. "I don't know," Emma admitted, already moving to follow the dog. They reached the fence just as Stella slipped through a gap between posts, racing toward the far corner of the property where a drainage ditch ran alongside their prized cornfield. John and Emma followed, John's longer legs quickly outpacing his daughter. When they caught up, Stella was standing at the edge of the ditch, barking insistently. In the muddy depression below lay their most valuable calf, a pedigreed Holstein they'd invested in to improve their herd, stuck in thick mud and bleeding weakly. "Sweet Jesus," John breathed, immediately scrambling down to assess the situation. She must have wandered through the fence during the storm. As Emma watched, wide-eyed, her father glanced back at Stella with newfound respect. "How did she know?" he whispered. The calves' rescue became a frantic race against fading daylight. John had rushed back to the barn for rope and a tarp while Emma stayed with Stella, stroking the dog's head and murmuring words of praise. "You saved her," Emma whispered. "Dad would have been so upset if anything happened to Clarabelle." The calf represented their future, an expensive investment John had made against the bank's advice, hoping the superior bloodline would eventually improve their struggling dairy operation. Emma had overheard enough late-night phone conversations to understand that losing Clarabelle would have been devastating. When John returned, his weathered face was set with determination. Together, they worked methodically, John securing the rope around the calf's body while Emma held the frightened animal's head, speaking in soothing tones she'd learned from years of helping with the herd. "Easy now, easy," John coached as they slowly pulled Clarabelle from the mud. The calf was weak but uninjured, her expensive brown and white coat caked with muck, but her large eyes bright with life. To Emma's surprise, Stella helped too, circling the scene, barking encouragement when the calf struggled, somehow understanding her role in this rescue mission without being told. Back at the barn, as they toweled Clarabelle dry, John kept glancing at Stella, who now sat patiently by the door, her dignified posture at odds with her bedraggled appearance. "Dad," Emma ventured, seizing the moment. "Can I ask you something?" John nodded, still focused on the calf's mud-caked legs. If Stella hadn't found Clarabelle, Emma began carefully. Would have been a $5,000 loss we couldn't afford, John finished grimly. He straightened, rubbing his lower back where an old football injury always flared during physical labor. After a long moment, he added quietly, "That dog just saved this farm a world of hurt." That night at dinner, microwaved leftovers eaten at their scarred oak table, John broke the silence that had become their normal mealtime companion since Sarah left. "Doc Wilson's coming at 10 tomorrow," he said, pushing peas around his plate. "I called the school. Said you had a doctor's appointment." Emma's fork clattered against her plate. "Really? I can stay home." John nodded, his expression unreadable. "Figure you should be here when he checks the dogs, since they're your responsibility and all." Emma beamed, but knew better than to push her luck by mentioning the 3-day deadline. Instead, she asked, "Can we clean Stella up before the vet comes? She's really beautiful under all that dirt." The next morning brought Dr. Wilson's beat-up truck rumbling down their driveway. The elderly veterinarian had been caring for Harper County's animals since before John was born, his weathered face a permanent fixture at county fairs and 4-H competitions. Well, he said, eyeing Stella who stood protectively before her puppies. "What have we got here?" "She found our missing calf," Emma announced proudly before John could respond. "She's super smart, Dr. Wilson." The vet knelt slowly, his arthritic joints protesting, and held out a hand for Stella to sniff. After a moment's consideration, she allowed him to approach her puppies. "German Shepherd, purebred from the looks of her," Dr. Wilson murmured as he examined the dog. "Probably around 3 years old. These cuts are defensive wounds. She's been in a fight, maybe with coyotes." He felt along her sides, frowning. "Severely malnourished, but the puppies seem healthy enough. She's been sacrificing her own nutrition for them." As Dr. Wilson continued his examination, John stood with arms crossed, maintaining his emotional distance even as Emma hung on every word. The vet administered vaccines, prescribed a special feeding regimen for Stella, and declared the puppies, both females, to be about 2 weeks old. "I'll check for a microchip," Dr. Wilson said, retrieving a scanner from his bag. Emma held her breath as he ran the device over Stella's shoulders and neck. The scanner remained silent. "No chip," he announced, and Emma exhaled with relief. "So nobody's looking for her?" she asked hopefully. Dr. Wilson shrugged. "Can't say for sure. I'll put the word out, see if anyone's missing a German Shepherd with pups." He packed up his equipment, then paused, studying Stella with professional appreciation. "That's a remarkable animal, John. Those eyes, there's intelligence there. Old-school shepherds would say she's got the eye. That special quality the best working dogs have." After the vet left, Emma turned to her father, her expression pleading. "Can we bathe her now? Please." John nodded reluctantly. "Got chores to finish first. Then we'll see about getting her cleaned up." When they finally coaxed Stella into a makeshift tub on the back porch hours later, Emma gasped as the mud washed away, revealing a magnificent black and tan coat underneath. Despite her emaciated frame, Stella's transformation was stunning. Her alert ears, intelligent eyes, and noble profile suddenly evident. "Dad, look!" Emma exclaimed, her hands gentle on Stella's wet fur. "She's beautiful." For a moment, John's stern expression softened. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "She certainly is." The next morning, news of Clarabelle's rescue spread through Miller's Creek with the efficiency of a small town's grapevine. By noon, 3 pickup trucks had pulled into the Parkers' driveway, their drivers eager to see the miracle dog for themselves. "Heard that shepherd of yours saved your prize Holstein," Tom Fletcher said, leaning against the fence post as John reluctantly showed him to the barn. Tom, who owned the largest dairy operation in the county, had never shown much interest in the Parker farm before. "She's not our shepherd," John corrected automatically, though his denial lacked conviction. "She's just staying here until we find her owner." Inside the barn, Emma was brushing Stella's newly cleaned coat, the dog's transformation remarkable. With proper food and care for just 2 days, Stella already looked stronger, her amber eyes alert and intelligent as she assessed the visitors. "That's a working dog if I ever saw one," Tom commented, squatting down to get a better look. Stella remained at Emma's side, neither friendly nor aggressive, simply watchful. "Military breeding lines, I'd guess. See the chest width? The angle of the haunches? Worth a pretty penny with proper papers." Emma's arms instinctively tightened around Stella's neck. She's not for sale. Tom laughed, standing with a grunt. Didn't say I was buying. Just making an observation. He turned to John. Dave Winters is putting together a piece for the county paper. His boy's got one of them fancy drones. Wants to do a little human interest story about the rescue. John frowned. We don't need that kind of attention. Might not be a bad thing. Tom shrugged. Township's been talking about revitalizing the agricultural community image. Dog saves valuable calf. Farm kid forms bond with heroic animal. That's the kind of wholesome story folks eat up these days. After the visitors left, John sat heavily at the kitchen table, rubbing his face with calloused hands. 3 days had come and gone. The dog should be at the shelter by now, but somehow, the deadline had passed unmentioned. Dad, Emma stood in the doorway, hopeful yet cautious. Dr. Wilson called while you were in the barn with Mr. Fletcher. He said nobody's reported a missing German shepherd with puppies. John looked at his daughter, really looked at her, for the first time in months. The shadow that had hung over her since Sarah's departure seemed lighter somehow. Her eyes sparkled with purpose, her shoulders straighter. That doesn't mean she doesn't have an owner, he said carefully. But if nobody claims her, Emma began. Emma, John interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. A dog like that is expensive to feed. Vet bills aren't cheap. We're barely keeping this place afloat as it is. Emma's lower lip trembled, but she squared her jaw. That stubborn Parker trait again. I'll use my birthday money. I'll do extra chores. I'll sell my bike. Your bike? The one you've been saving up for since last Christmas. Stella is more important, Emma said with absolute conviction. Later that evening, as John sat on the porch steps watching the sunset paint the cornfields gold, Stella padded silently from the barn and sat beside him, her gaze following his across the land. What am I supposed to do with you? John asked quietly. Stella's ears perked forward as if genuinely considering the question. You know we can't afford to keep you, he continued. And those pups, they'll need good homes too. The phone rang inside, interrupting his one-sided conversation. It was Dave Winters, the local reporter and father of Emma's science teacher. John, I heard about your miracle dog. Dave began without preamble. I'm working on a feature for the regional section of the Tribune. They're looking for feel-good rural stories to balance out all the doom and gloom. Mind if I come by tomorrow with a photographer? John's first instinct was to refuse, but something stopped him. What exactly are you looking to do? Just a simple piece. Family farm struggling through drought. Heroic dog saves valuable calf. That sort of thing. Human interest, you know? Nothing invasive. Who told you we were struggling? John asked sharply. Dave chuckled. John, everyone's struggling with this drought. You're not special in that regard. After a pause, he added, Look, the Tribune's paying good money for regional content. I could make sure you get a little something for your time. John watched through the window as Emma moved around the kitchen, humming as she prepared Stella's dinner, the first time he'd heard her hum since Sarah left. Fine, he said finally. But Emma's not to know about any money, understood? This is just a nice story about her dog. Her dog? Dave asked, the smile evident in his voice. So you've decided to keep her then? John hung up without answering, recognizing the dangerous territory he was entering. Outside, Stella still sat beside his empty spot on the steps, her posture alert yet peaceful in the gathering dusk. Just temporary, John muttered to himself as he rejoined her. Just until we figure things out. Stella leaned slightly against his leg, her warmth solid and somehow reassuring in the cooling evening air. The next day dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect Midwestern morning that made John remember why he'd chosen to stay on the family farm when all his high school friends had fled to cities. Dave Winters arrived promptly at 9, a young photographer named Megan in tow, her professional camera equipment at odds with her casual attire and friendly demeanor. This must be the famous dog we've been hearing about, Dave said, crouching down to where Stella sat alertly beside Emma on the porch steps. He extended his hand palm down, and Stella sniffed it cautiously before allowing a brief pat. Her name is Stella, Emma announced proudly. And these are her puppies, Luna and Star. She gestured to the small wicker basket where the two puppies, eyes now open and taking in the world with curious expressions, wiggled and tumbled over each other. As the photographer set up equipment near the barn where the rescue had taken place, Dave interviewed Emma and John separately. Emma spoke animatedly about finding Stella in the storm, while John provided a more measured account of the calves' rescue, careful to downplay their financial struggles. "So what happens next for Stella?" Dave asked, his recorder capturing John's hesitation. "We're still figuring that out," John replied carefully, aware of Emma watching from a distance as she helped Megan position Stella for photographs. "Dad's letting us keep her," Emma called out confidently, causing John to wince slightly. Dave raised an eyebrow but didn't push the issue. The photo shoot moved to the pasture where Clarabelle now grazed contentedly, seemingly unaffected by her ordeal. To everyone's surprise, Stella demonstrated an unexpected talent during the session. Without prompting, she began herding the curious calf who had wandered too close to the fence, circling smoothly and guiding the young animal back toward the safety of the herd with gentle nudges. "That's remarkable," Megan commented, her camera clicking rapidly. "Has she been trained to herd?" John shook his head, as amazed as everyone else. "Not by us, anyway. Some of these working breeds have instincts bred into them for generations," Dave explained. "My cousin in Montana raises border collies for his sheep operation. Says the best ones know what to do before they're ever trained." Emma beamed with pride. "See, Dad? She's meant to be here. She's a farm dog." That evening, after the reporters had left with promises to send advance copies of the article, John sat at the computer in their small home office, a space that had once been Sarah's domain. The stack of bills beside the keyboard seemed to mock him as he searched Drought Forecast Midwest and found nothing but grim predictions for the summer ahead. The sound of Emma's laughter drifted through the open window, a sound so rare these days that it pulled him from his worries to see what had caused it. In the yard, Emma was tossing a frayed tennis ball for Stella, who retrieved it with machine-like precision despite her still recovering body. The puppies watched from their basket on the porch, their tiny heads following the action with comical seriousness. John's phone rang, cutting short this moment of observation. The caller ID showed Harper County Bank, causing his stomach to clench. "John Parker," he answered, mentally preparing for another difficult conversation about payment extensions. "Mr. Parker, this is Diane Mendoza from marketing," came an unexpectedly cheerful voice. "I'm calling because we've heard about your heroic farm dog, and we're wondering if you'd be interested in having her appear in our community support campaign." John blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, what?" "The bank is launching a Supporting Rural Families initiative, and we're looking for authentic stories to feature. Dave Winters mentioned your situation, and it seems perfect for what we're trying to communicate." Dave had no business discussing our financial situation, John said stiffly. "Oh, he didn't discuss specifics," Diane assured him quickly. "Just mentioned that your farm, like many others, has faced challenges with the drought and that this remarkable dog helped save a valuable investment. We provide compensation for your participation, of course." John's immediate instinct was to refuse, but the pile of bills stared accusingly from the desk. "What kind of compensation are we talking about?" As he listened to the details, John watched Emma and Stella through the window, their newfound bond evident in every interaction. For the first time in months, his daughter looked genuinely happy. "Can I think about it?" he asked finally. "Of course," Diane replied. "But we need to know by Friday. The campaign launches next month, and we want to schedule the shoot as soon as possible." After hanging up, John stepped onto the porch where Emma was now brushing Stella while the dog patiently endured the attention, her amber eyes following John's approach. "Dad, look. Her coat is getting so shiny." "Emma," John began carefully. "We need to talk about something." Emma's face immediately fell, her body tensing as if preparing for bad news, a reaction that broke John's heart. Had he become so predictable in his doom and gloom? "The bank called," he said, sitting beside her on the porch step. "They want to feature Stella in some advertising campaign. They'd pay us." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? Stella's going to be famous?" "Maybe a little famous," John chuckled, surprised by his own lightness. "Just locally." "So, does this mean we're keeping her?" Emma asked, hope trembling in her voice. John looked at his daughter, then at the dog who had somehow, in just a few days, begun filling the empty spaces Sarah had left behind. "Let's take it one day at a time," he said finally, neither a yes nor a no, but enough to make Emma throw her arms around his neck in a hug that felt like coming home. The article ran in Sunday's edition of the Regional Tribune, complete with glossy photographs of Stella guiding Clarabelle back to the herd. "Miracle Dog Saves Family Farm," read the headline. The story painting a heartwarming picture of rural resilience that conveniently glossed over the Parker farm's financial troubles. By Monday morning, John's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The local TV station wanted an interview. 3 more companies had marketing proposals. The county fair committee wondered if Stella could make an appearance at the upcoming summer festival. Emma, delighted by the attention, eagerly collected the messages while John retreated to the fields, seeking solace in the rhythmic work of checking irrigation systems. "Dad," Emma's excited voice carried across the cornfield around noon. She ran toward him, sneakers kicking up dust, Stella loping gracefully at her side. "There's a lady on the phone from Indianapolis. She says she's with the Midwest Working Dog Association and wants to talk to you right away." John wiped sweat from his brow, sighing heavily. "Take a message, Emma. I'm busy. She says it's urgent." Emma persisted, thrusting his cell phone toward him. "She says it's about Stella." Something in his daughter's voice made John take the phone. "John Parker," he answered curtly. "Mr. Parker, this is Dr. Melissa Alvarez with the Midwest Working Dog Association," came a clipped, professional voice. "I believe you have one of our training program dogs." John's blood ran cold. "Excuse me." A black and tan female German Shepherd, approximately 3 years old, with distinctive amber eyes. She was part of our elite search and rescue training program and went missing during a training exercise in the March storms. We've been searching for her for nearly 3 months. John glanced at Emma, who was watching him with wide, worried eyes, one hand resting protectively on Stella's head. He turned away slightly, lowering his voice. "How can you be sure it's the same dog? The photographs in the Tribune article are quite clear, Mr. Parker. That's Artemis, one of our most promising trainees. We have documentation, including her vaccination records and breeding papers. Her puppies are particularly valuable. They're from our experimental bloodline specifically bred for scent detection work." John felt sick. "You're saying you have proof of ownership?" "Absolute proof," Dr. Alvarez confirmed. "We'll be sending representatives tomorrow to collect her and the puppies. We'll compensate you, of course, for your care of them." When John hung up, Emma was staring at him with an expression that reminded him painfully of the day he'd had to tell her Sarah wasn't coming back. "What did she want?" Emma asked, her voice small. John crouched down to her level, his weathered hands enveloping her small shoulders. "Emma, honey, we need to talk about Stella. It seems she belongs to a training program. They've been looking for her." Emma's face crumpled. "No, she doesn't belong to them. She chose us. Emma, they didn't take care of her." Emma cried, tears spilling down her freckled cheeks. "She was hurt and hungry when she found us. If they really cared about her, they would have found her before now." John had no answer for that logic. "They're coming tomorrow," he said gently. "They have papers proving she's theirs." Emma broke away from his grasp, flinging her arms around Stella's neck. "I won't let them take her. She's ours now. She saved Clarabelle. She belongs here." That evening, word spread through Miller's Creek about Stella's impending removal. By sunset, a small delegation of neighbors had gathered in the Parkers' kitchen. Tom Fletcher, Mrs. Wilson from the school bus, Dr. Wilson the veterinarian, and Pastor Roberts from the Methodist church where the Parkers had attended every Sunday until Sarah's departure. "It's not right," Tom declared, his usual bluster tempered by genuine concern. "That dog's found her place here. The law's pretty clear on ownership," Pastor Roberts countered reluctantly. "If they have documentation." "Documentation be damned," Dr. Wilson interrupted, surprising everyone with his vehemence. "That dog was neglected, plain and simple. No properly cared for animal ends up in that condition." Mrs. Wilson nodded vigorously. "That child and that dog have a bond. Breaking it would be cruel to both of them." As the adults debated, Emma sat on the porch steps with Stella, whispering fiercely into the dog's alert ear. "I won't let them take you," she promised. "We'll run away if we have to." Inside, the conversation had turned to legal options. Tom Fletcher was offering to call his nephew, who practiced law in Des Moines. Dr. Wilson suggested documenting Stella's condition when she arrived as evidence of neglect. "Hold on," John interrupted, raising his hands. "I appreciate everyone's concern, but this isn't a community decision. This is about my daughter and a dog that, legally, belongs to someone else." "John," Mrs. Wilson said gently, "when was the last time you saw Emma this happy?" The question landed like a physical blow. John had no answer. Late that night, after their well-meaning neighbors had departed and Emma had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, John sat alone on the porch. Stella, who now slept at the foot of Emma's bed with her puppies, padded silently outside to join him. "They're coming for you tomorrow," John told her softly. Stella sat beside him, her amber eyes reflecting the moon as she gazed across the fields that had been in the Parker family for 4 generations. Fields that might not stay in the family much longer if things didn't change. "What am I supposed to do?" John asked the night air. "Fight a legal battle we can't afford to keep a dog we can't afford to feed? Or break my daughter's heart all over again?" Stella leaned against him, her warm presence a wordless comfort as John faced the hardest decision since watching Sarah's taillights disappear down the driveway 6 months ago. The representatives from the Midwest Working Dog Association arrived precisely at 10 the next morning. A tall, stern-looking woman in her 50s with salt and pepper hair pulled into a severe bun, and a younger man in tactical pants and a polo shirt with the organization's logo. They drove a specialized transport vehicle with climate-controlled compartments designed specifically for working dogs. "I'm Dr. Melissa Alvarez." The woman introduced herself, extending a hand to John, who waited on the porch steps. "This is Keith Sanderson, one of our trainers. Thank you for contacting us so promptly about Artemis." "We call her Stella," John said, not taking the offered hand. Behind him, Emma stood in the doorway, her small body rigid with tension, eyes red from a night of crying. Dr. Alvarez's professional smile faltered slightly. "Yes, well, where is she now?" "In the barn with her puppies," John replied. "But before you see her, I'd like to ask some questions." The woman's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Mr. Parker, I understand this is difficult. Children become attached quickly. But legally, how did she get lost?" John interrupted, crossing his arms. "And why was she injured and half-starved when my daughter found her?" Keith stepped forward, his expression earnest. "Sir, Artemis was part of a training exercise simulating disaster conditions. There was a severe thunderstorm, and she got spooked by lightning that struck too close to the training site. She bolted, broke her lead, and disappeared into the woods. We searched for weeks, had volunteers combing the entire county. That was nearly 3 months ago," John pointed out. "You're saying a highly trained search and rescue dog couldn't find her way back or be found in all that time?" Dr. Alvarez's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Mr. Parker, we made every effort. We had search parties, contacted every shelter and vet clinic in a 100-mile radius, posted rewards. The truth is, we'd begun to fear she was dead." "She nearly was," came Emma's voice from the doorway, stronger than John had expected. "She was protecting her puppies. That's why she was so thin. She was giving them all the food she could find." Dr. Alvarez softened as she looked at Emma. "You took very good care of her. We're extremely grateful for that. The puppies are particularly valuable to our program. They're from a specialized breeding line." "They're not things," Emma said fiercely. "They're Luna and Star, and they belong with their mom." At that moment, the screen door creaked open further, and Stella emerged, her amber eyes immediately fixing on the visitors. She froze, ears forward, body tense but not aggressive. "Artemis," Keith said softly, taking a step forward. "Hey, girl." Stella remained motionless, her gaze flicking between the strangers and Emma. When Keith made a hand gesture that John recognized as a command, the dog tilted her head slightly, but didn't obey. "She doesn't remember you," Emma said, dropping to her knees beside Stella and wrapping an arm around the dog's neck. "She chose us. She saved our farm." Dr. Alvarez sighed, genuine regret crossing her features. "I understand this is emotional, but the fact remains that Artemis is government property. She was bred and trained at considerable expense for life-saving work. Her puppies represent the next generation of that program." "Government property?" John repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "A living animal is government property. Our program receives federal funding," Dr. Alvarez explained. "Technically, yes." John's jaw worked as he wrestled with his next words. "What if we compensated you? Paid for another dog for your program?" Keith laughed incredulously. "Sir, Artemis represents over $50,000 in breeding, raising, and specialized training. No offense, but..." His words trailed off as he took in the modest farmhouse, the aging equipment visible in the yard, the clear signs of a family operating on the financial edge. "Why don't we go inside and discuss this civilly?" Dr. Alvarez suggested. "Perhaps there's a compromise to be reached." In the kitchen, as coffee brewed, the conversation grew increasingly tense. John offered to cover the cost of the puppies if they could keep Stella. Dr. Alvarez countered that the mother was more valuable than the offspring. Emma sat silent, tears streaming down her face, while Stella remained protectively at her side, occasionally nudging the girl's hand with her nose as if offering comfort. "There's something else you should know," John said finally, playing his last card. "Stella, Artemis, has been experiencing health issues since arriving here." Dr. Alvarez's head snapped up. "What kind of issues?" "Recurring seizures," John lied, avoiding Emma's confused gaze. "Dr. Wilson, our vet, documented them. Said they could be stress-induced, might affect her ability to work safely in high-pressure situations." Keith frowned. "That wasn't in her medical history. Maybe that's why she ran," John suggested, hating himself for the deception but desperate to find leverage. "Maybe she sensed something was wrong." Dr. Alvarez exchanged a concerned glance with Keith. "We need to see documentation of these episodes." "I can call Dr. Wilson right now," John offered, reaching for his phone. "He can bring over his files." Before Dr. Alvarez could respond, Emma's small voice cut through the tension. "Dad, stop." All eyes turned to her. "Don't lie," Emma said, her green eyes boring into John's. "Stella doesn't have seizures. She's perfect." She turned to Dr. Alvarez, her chin lifting with that stubborn Parker determination. "If you take her, you'll break her heart. And mine." Her voice cracked slightly. "Haven't we lost enough already?" A heavy silence fell over the Parker kitchen. Emma's words hung in the air, raw and honest. "Dr. Alvarez shifted uncomfortably in her chair, studying the determined 8-year-old whose small hand remained buried in Stella's thick fur. "Emma," Dr. Alvarez said finally, her professional tone softening. "I understand this is difficult. But Artemis, Stella, was trained for a very important purpose. She can help find people during disasters, people who might otherwise die without her special abilities. She already saved something important here," Emma countered, her voice small but unwavering. "And she chose us when she needed help. Doesn't that matter?" Keith cleared his throat. "Dr. Alvarez, perhaps we should step outside for a moment to discuss our options." The two representatives excused themselves to the porch, their hushed conversation occasionally rising in volume before falling again to indistinguishable murmurs. Inside, John knelt beside Emma, his weathered hands gently squeezing her shoulders. "I'm sorry, kiddo," he whispered. "I tried." "They can't take her, Dad," Emma insisted, tears welling in her eyes again. "She belongs with us now." John had no answer that wouldn't break her heart further. Instead, he pulled her into a tight hug, feeling her small body tremble with emotion. Stella watched them intently, her amber eyes moving between father and daughter as if understanding the gravity of the moment. The screen door creaked open as Dr. Alvarez and Keith returned, their expressions unreadable. "Mr. Parker," Dr. Alvarez began formally, "we've reached a decision. We'd like to propose a compromise of sorts." John straightened, keeping one arm protectively around Emma's shoulders. "I'm listening." "Artemis, Stella, was indeed part of our elite training program, but there was something we didn't mention earlier." She exchanged a glance with Keith, who nodded slightly. "She was actually on probationary status when she disappeared." "Probationary?" John repeated. Keith took over the explanation. Despite her exceptional intelligence and abilities, Artemis had a tendency to disobey direct orders when she sensed someone needed help. In a structured search and rescue operation, that kind of unpredictability can be problematic. "Are you saying she was being dismissed from your program?" John asked incredulously. "Not dismissed," Dr. Alvarez clarified quickly. "Reassessed. We were considering redirecting her training toward a different specialty, perhaps therapy work instead of search and rescue. Her empathic abilities are exceptional, but her independent decision-making was becoming an issue in the field." Emma's grip on Stella tightened. "She knows what's important," she declared fiercely. "That's why she saved Clarabelle." For the first time, Dr. Alvarez smiled genuinely. "Yes, it seems she does." She sighed deeply before continuing. "We're prepared to offer you a unique arrangement. The puppies are still government property. They're from our specialized breeding program, and represent a significant investment. Emma's face fell, but Dr. Alvarez raised a hand to indicate she wasn't finished. However, we would consider leaving Stella, Artemis, in your care under specific conditions. What conditions? John asked warily. First, she would technically remain program property, but placed with you as a permanent foster family. Second, she would need to participate in our research studies on canine intuition and agricultural applications, which would require periodic evaluations and training sessions. Dr. Alvarez paused. And third, we would need access to the puppies for our program once they're weaned. Emma looked up at her father, hope battling with heartbreak in her eyes. We'd still have Stella? It appears so, John said cautiously. But the puppies would go with them eventually. After a moment's thought, Emma nodded solemnly. Luna and Star need to grow up first. Stella is teaching them important things, but they can help find lost people when they're bigger. She looked directly at Dr. Alvarez. If you promise to be kind to them. Dr. Alvarez seemed momentarily taken aback by the child's maturity. You have my word, she said softly. As the details were worked out at the kitchen table, paperwork signed, arrangements made for follow-up visits. Keith spent time in the yard with Stella, testing her responses to various commands. To everyone's surprise, she performed flawlessly, demonstrating training that went far beyond basic obedience. Her core training is intact, Keith reported, genuinely impressed. And Emma's somehow gotten her to respond to an entirely new set of commands as well. It's remarkable. Late that afternoon, as the MWDA vehicle drove away, without Stella but with promises to return in 6 weeks to check on the puppies, John and Emma stood on the porch, a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty between them. Did we do the right thing, Dad? Emma asked, watching the dust settle on the driveway. Letting them take Luna and Star eventually? John crouched down to her level, his hands on her shoulders. I think we did, kiddo. Those puppies can help people, maybe even save lives someday. And we get to keep Stella. But they'll miss their mom, Emma persisted, the worry of a child who knew too well what that felt like etched across her freckled face. We'll make sure they're ready, John promised. And maybe Dr. Alvarez will let us visit them sometimes. That evening, as John was closing up the barn, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Harper County Bank again, but this time it wasn't the marketing department. Mr. Parker, came the crisp voice of the loan officer he'd been avoiding for weeks. I understand you've recently acquired a rather remarkable dog. John tensed. What about it? Our Agricultural Development Committee has been discussing your situation. The drought relief program you applied for last month has been approved, but there's more. We're interested in partnering with the Working Dog Association on their new agricultural application research. Your farm would be an ideal test site, with compensation for participation, of course. John leaned against the barn door, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. You're offering us a research stipend? For having Stella here? Artemis, or Stella, as I understand you call her, represents a unique opportunity to study how highly trained working dogs can benefit family farming operations. The potential applications for safety, efficiency, and animal management are substantial. As John hung up the phone, he stared up at the star-filled Iowa sky, a strange feeling expanding in his chest, something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Inside the house, Emma was already in pajamas, sitting cross-legged on her bed with Stella curled beside her, the puppies nursing contentedly. Time for bed, kiddo, John said from the doorway. 5 more minutes. Emma pleaded. I'm reading to Stella. John noticed the worn book in his daughter's hands, Where the Red Fern Grows, Sarah's favorite, the one she used to read to Emma every night. Sure, he said softly. 5 more minutes. As he turned to leave, Emma's voice stopped him. Dad, is Stella really going to stay forever now? John looked back at the tableau on the bed. His daughter, the dog who had changed their lives in less than 2 weeks, and the puppies who would soon begin their own journeys. Yes, he said with certainty that surprised even him. She's home now. The summer heat shimmered above the cornfields as John guided his ancient tractor along the irrigation lines. From his elevated seat, he could see the entire Parker farm spread before him. The red barn freshly painted, the dairy operation expanded with 2 new Holstein heifers, and the newly constructed training arena where Emma and Stella practiced daily. 3 months had passed since the MWDA representatives had driven away with Luna and Star, now properly weaned and ready for their specialized training. Emma had cried for days afterward, but the weekly video updates Dr. Alvarez sent showing the puppy's progress had gradually eased the pain of separation. "Dad," Emma's voice carried across the field as she ran along the dirt path, Stella loping gracefully beside her. "They're here. The TV people are here." John cut the engine and climbed down, wiping sweat from his brow. Today marked a new chapter in their unexpected journey. The film crew from National Agricultural Network had arrived to begin shooting their segment for the documentary series America's Hidden Heroes, Rural Innovation. As John walked toward the house, he marveled at how much had changed. The bank's research partnership had not only secured their mortgage but provided funds to expand their dairy operation. Dr. Alvarez's team had installed specialized training equipment in the old barn, transforming it into a research facility where Stella's remarkable abilities were documented weekly. Most importantly, the shadows that had hung over their family since Sarah's departure had begun to lift. "Mr. Parker?" A woman with a clipboard and a headset approached, extending her hand. "I'm Danielle Rodriguez, senior producer. We spoke on the phone last week." "Call me John," he replied, shaking her hand. "Welcome to Parker Family Farms." The crew quickly set up equipment around the property, preparing for interviews and demonstrations. Emma, now 9 after celebrating her birthday the previous month, waited nervously on the porch, her sundress and braided hair a concession to the occasion. "You ready for this, kiddo?" John asked, sitting beside her. Emma nodded solemnly. "Stella and I practiced everything. She knows what to do." John smiled, remembering the hours Emma had spent in the training arena, patiently working with Stella on the routines they planned to demonstrate for the cameras. The bond between them had deepened into something extraordinary, a partnership based on mutual trust and an almost uncanny understanding. "John," Danielle called from the yard. "There's someone here to see you. Says she's family." John turned, confusion crossing his features. They had no extended family nearby. His heart stuttered as he recognized the woman emerging from the rental car, parked beside the production van. Sarah. She looked different, her blonde hair cut shorter, her frame thinner than he remembered. But her green eyes, Emma's eyes, were unmistakable. She stood uncertainly by the car, one hand clutching a small overnight bag, the other shielding her eyes from the sun as she took in the film crew, the improved farm, the changes made in her absence. "Mom." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah's gaze found her daughter, and her composed expression crumbled. "Emma," she breathed. Before John could process what was happening, Emma had bolted from the porch and was running toward her mother. Stella, ever protective, followed closely, her posture alert but not aggressive. John remained frozen on the porch steps, a storm of emotions rendering him immobile as he watched his daughter fling herself into her mother's arms. "I saw you on TV," Sarah explained through tears, kneeling to Emma's level. "The teaser for the documentary. I couldn't believe it was you, so grown up. We have a dog now," Emma said, pulling back to gesture at Stella, who sat vigilantly at her side. "Her name is Stella. She's special." Sarah smiled cautiously, extending a hand toward Stella. "She looks very special." John finally found his voice and his feet, approaching slowly. "Sarah, this is unexpected." She straightened, meeting his gaze with uncertainty. "I should have called, but I was afraid you wouldn't want me to come." "Why are you here?" John asked, his tone carefully neutral for Emma's sake, though his heart raced with conflicting emotions: anger, hurt, hope, fear. "To make things right," Sarah said quietly. "To explain. To ask forgiveness, if that's possible." The moment stretched between them, years of shared history and months of painful absence creating a chasm neither knew how to bridge. Danielle cleared her throat awkwardly. "We can postpone today's shoot if this isn't a good time." "No," Emma said firmly, surprising both her parents. "Stella and I are ready. Mom can watch too." She turned to Sarah, her expression serious beyond her years. "A lot's happened since you left. You have catching up to do." What followed was a day unlike any the Parker farm had seen. As cameras rolled, Emma and Stella demonstrated their remarkable partnership. Herding exercises, detection challenges, and the unique communication system they developed using musical cues and hand signals. Sarah watched from the sidelines, witnessing the transformation in her daughter, the confidence and purpose that radiated from the child, she had left behind. During a break in filming, Sarah found John by the fence, watching as Emma showed Stella's training arena to the impressed producers. "She's amazing," Sarah said softly. "They both are." John nodded, his eyes never leaving his daughter. "She's had to be." "John, I know I can't just walk back in." "Then why did you?" he interrupted, finally turning to face her, the months of anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "What do you want, Sarah?" She took a deep breath. "Chicago wasn't what I thought it would be. The design job, the city life, it was all emptier than I imagined. And I missed her every day. Missed you both. You could have called, written, anything." "I was ashamed," Sarah admitted, tears welling. "The longer I stayed away, the harder it became to reach out. And then I saw Emma on that preview clip last week, talking about the dog who changed their lives, and I knew I couldn't stay away anymore." Before John could respond, Emma approached, Stella at her side as always. The dog looked between the three humans, her intelligent eyes assessing the emotional current. "Dad, they want to film the sunset scene now." John nodded, thankful for the interruption. "I'll be right there, kiddo." "Mom too?" Emma asked hesitantly. Sarah glanced at John, leaving the decision to him. After a long moment, he nodded. "Mom too, if she wants." As the golden Iowa sunset painted the farmland in amber hues, cameras captured the image that would eventually become the documentary's iconic poster. Emma in the center, flanked by her parents, with Stella sitting alertly before them, the rehabilitated farm stretching behind them toward the horizon. Later that night, after the crew had departed and Emma had finally fallen asleep with Stella keeping watch at the foot of her bed, John and Sarah sat across from each other at the kitchen table, mugs of coffee between them. "What happens now?" John asked, voicing the question that had hung between them all day. Sarah traced the rim of her mug with one finger. "I'd like to come home," she said simply. "But I know that's not my decision anymore. I broke this family, John. I'm not expecting to just pick up where we left off." John was silent for a long moment, thinking of everything that had changed, how the farm had transformed, how Emma had grown, how Stella had somehow filled a void none of them had been able to name. "We're different now," he said finally. "All of us. The farm you left isn't the farm that's here today." "I can see that," Sarah acknowledged. "If you're coming back, it needs to be for the right reasons," John continued. "And it needs to be permanent. Emma can't handle losing you twice." "I know," Sarah whispered. "I want to be here, to rebuild what I broke, to earn back your trust, both of yours. If you'll let me try." From the doorway came a soft whine. Stella stood there, amber eyes moving between them, before padding silently across the floor to sit between their chairs, her presence a grounding force. John reached down to pat the dog's head, remembering how this remarkable animal had appeared during the worst storm they'd weathered, bringing with her a strange kind of healing none of them could have predicted. "One day at a time," he said finally, meeting Sarah's hopeful gaze. "That's how we've been living. One day at a time." Sarah nodded, tears spilling over. "One day at a time," she agreed, reaching cautiously across the table. After a moment's hesitation, John took her hand, Stella's warm weight leaning against his leg as they sat in silence, watching the moon rise over the farm that had nearly been lost, but now represented something neither of them had expected to find again, a second chance. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and if you watched this far, comment, "I watched this far," and leave your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears in the end screen. It's very exciting.